Welcome back. This video is all about R in the trail series. R stands for route planning. And different to the AT and PCT, the CDT is considered to be a choose your own adventure trail. And what that really means is that there is a coherent line, which is called the red line. It's kind of the main trail that the CDT takes. But along the 5,000 kilometers to Canada, there's really probably hundreds of alternative trails you can take. Loops west, loops east, including towns and valleys along the way, making detours to other peaks. There's a lot to choose from. Route planning is really not just about memorizing a path and following the signs, even though that sometimes is part of the route finding along the CDT. But it's also about creating a system that allows you to flexibly adjust your trail to both environmental factors as well as to your own state. This video is really going to be all about the instruments I'm using for this. The number one instrument, since it's 2025, is obviously going to be my smartphone and the FarOut app. Now, FarOut is really not an app that is very commonly found in Europe. I don't think I've ever heard anybody using it, but it's essentially a GPS topo map, very similar to other apps such as Gaia, CalTopo, Alpenverein Aktiv, Swiss Topo. There's all kinds of apps which more or less do the same thing. I've used a lot of them over the years. My favorite one has always been FatMaps. I've never really used FarOut at all, so this is going to be the first time that I'll be using it. And I'm not really a big fan of the app itself. It does have maps and it does have GPS navigation, so that's all good and fine. I just think the usability is a bit clunky. It does have one very huge advantage though, and that is really crowdsourced data on different trails. So there's points of interest along the way, such as water sources or places, where the road forks. And for all these points of interest, people can leave comments, which is extremely helpful. Kind of like on Google Maps, where you can leave a review for a restaurant. It's essentially the same. You can leave a comment for any place along the trail. And what that really does is, because there's such a small community on the CDT, if you're not the first person going through, you generally tend to have more or less up-to-date information on conditions on the trail. So, for example, where there are camp spots, how the water situation is on certain rivers, whether certain water sources have flow. So all of these kind of informations tend to be left behind by hikers going through there, and over the course of a hiking season, it really creates a wonderful source of information that you wouldn't otherwise have. That's really a huge plus on the FarOut app, and something that I haven't really seen on any of the other maps, which really just focus on providing map and topographical information, but not really any kind of community information. The defining feature of the CDT is really the fact that you are continuously choosing between the main path and different forms or different alternates along the way. And information on these alternates is really, at least for me, based on three different sources. So one is FarOut itself, which has a couple of trails which are more or less the big alternates. It's directly incorporated into the map or into the app. And the second thing that I'm using is a set of Jonathan Ley CDT maps. So Jonathan Ley hiked the CDT for many years and just hand annotated a lot of topographical maps with potential alternates and providing information what's possible, when there are blowdowns, when there's fires, when there's flooding. All of these things can happen along the way. And the third thing that I'm bringing is I also have in cloud storage the USGS topographical maps of the entire trail, which also include trail data. And depending on which section I'm in, I will have that on my phone as well. So if I really should need to deviate along the way, I will have those on my phone to be able to navigate even without FarOut. However, relying solely on smartphones is usually not a good idea in the mountains. Screens crack, phones fall into water, batteries die. There's 100 reasons why your smartphone might break down along the way. So I have two sources of backup information regarding routing. One is between sections. I upload the GPX tracks of the trail that I intend to take for the next section onto my smartwatch, which is a Garmin Phoenix. And having that GPS extract on the watch helps me to even navigate based on GPS data without actually having a smartphone. That's my first form of backup, and the third form of backup is really the Garmin inreach that I'm carrying, which is the GPS beacon that's mostly related to, or that is mostly used for emergency services actually, but it also has a navigating feature. So having those GPS extracts not only on my smartphone but also on my watch and on my inreach, that's essentially 3 layers of backup, and having all 3 devices fail on you at the same time is not impossible. So for example, if you drop your pack during a river crossing, it's quite possible that that might happen. But in a situation like that, you would also lose any kind of physical map, so that would not really make any difference. Yeah, those 3 tools really are the system that I use for navigating the backcountry in the US. So the most important information that I'm currently looking at a lot is snow hotel data, which is snow telemetry data, and it provides information on the snowpack in the Rocky Mountains and Glacier National Park. And that's really important because it defines most likely what my route will look like. I will be starting northbound, so heading out from the Mexican border towards Canada in mid-April, and then depending on how much snow there is in the San Juan mountains, I will be considering to flip north once I hit the northern end of New Mexico and bail out of Cumbres Pass before hitting the snowpack in Colorado. The Colorado section of the CDT is really, it's almost never below 10,000 feet, very often above 11,000 feet. So if you move into that at the end of May, beginning of June, it is quite possible that you're walking through a constant snowpack for weeks at end, and that is just not just dangerous but also really annoying because post-holing is just extraordinarily exhausting. So should it be the case that there's more snow in the Colorado part and less snow in East Glacier, I will be heading north and start a southbound journey from Canada back down to the southern end of Colorado. Planning the route finding for the CDT is really an exercise in flexibility. I plan for the probable, but prepare for the inevitable changes as well. Preparing at home, what you can do is obviously the first part of route planning. The second one is then checking conditions ahead of time before you're actually heading out on the next section. And the last layer is really assessing conditions once you're on the trail. You know, you can see it with your own eyes. It's essentially the same approach that you do for backcountry skiing. You know, three steps: plan at home, plan shortly before you leave, and then plan on the ground. The next part of this series will be about A, which is appropriate gear, and I'll be talking about what I am bringing and why I am bringing it.